In search of sunflowers. It all started for Tina Botha 12 years ago when her 17-year-old son lost his battle against leukemia. Back then, leukemia was a death sentence, and the odds of finding a matching donor were slim.
It all started back in 1997 when my son was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia and needed to find a matching donor in order to have a transplant. And at that point, the registry was really very small in South Africa. There were only about 600 donors, and it was impossible to find a matching donor for him.
Obviously, I was scared of death because you hear the word cancer, you hear the word leukemia, and you immediately think death. I know that's one of the first thoughts that I had was, am I going to die?
But the death of her son was not part of Tina Botha's plan. She had no idea back then that her efforts to save Chris and find him a bone marrow donor would lead to her helping hundreds of other families in years to come.
I suppose by nature, my whole life, I've been a difficult person. I've been a fighter. I've never really taken no for an answer. So maybe it was just in my nature to, when I was told that there were hardly any donors on the registry and there was nothing we could do, I've never taken to there's nothing we can do. There's always something you can do.
Finding donors is critical, but the odds of finding a perfect match are 1 in 100,000, so the more people available on the registry, the better the chance for life. When Chris fell ill, there were only 800 South Africans listed, and no one matched. Eventually, a donor came forward, and by the time we met Chris and his family, he had already had 2 transplants.
Without a donor, you have no hope, because you can have the best doctor in the world, the best facilities in the world, you can have all the money in the world, but if you haven't got a donor, you've got nothing.
After the second transplant, it looked like Chris was on the road to recovery.
So you came home believing everything was fine, it was over?
It was over. I was happy. I knew that in a couple of weeks from now, I'd be able to start a normal life again.
But a year later, when Tina thought they had cheated death, a routine blood test changed everything.
And I had to be somewhere, and I actually said to them, I'll phone you just now for the results. And they said, no, wait, Prof wants to see you. And I knew.
Chris had relapsed. Either he had weeks to live, or he could try for a third transplant.
I don't know, some people probably think I'm out of my mind going for 3 transplants, but it's either that or a possible 3 weeks of living. And 3 weeks it's not worth it to just give up. So I'm gonna do it again.
3 months later, in August of 2000, we were at the hospital when Chris tried one last time. The chemotherapy was taking its toll.
I'd say this is probably it. I don't think I'd want to do it again.
It's still a chance, whereas without it, there's no chance.
While the transplant was underway, his school, family and friends prayed for success. But it was not to be. His body, ravaged by chemotherapy, was too weak and he went into renal failure. Chris died on the 10th of September, 10 years ago.
This was the article we had in the U magazine when Chris was sick, and the response was phenomenal. Our phones were ringing off the hook and we had volunteers sitting on the floor answering phones. Honestly, the South African people responded incredibly after this article. We had to find an unrelated match and there wasn't one. And obviously, so we lost him, but had we had this then, maybe he would have had a match and maybe he would be with us today. And that's why I appeal to people so badly to join a registry, because you don't want to wait until somebody close to you is diagnosed, because it's too late. Join a registry while you can. Build a state asset so that if somebody close to you is diagnosed, you can find that match.
Turning tragedy into triumph, Tina Botha has built the only organization in Africa that actively recruits bone marrow donors onto the South African Bone Marrow Registry.
And the winner in the ShopRite Checkers Woman of the Year 2012 Healthcare Givers category is Tina Botha.
The Sunflower Fund raises money to pay for bone marrow stem cell donor tests through National Bandana Day.
You know, she just didn't stop. It wasn't like, I need my moment to mourn now and I need my moment to get my life sorted out. She was like, no, I need to get out there and help other people and other families.
Lying in bed, nauseous and in a lot of pain, Chris picked up a paintbrush and he painted a sunflower. Little did anyone know that years later, the sunflower would come to represent something far greater than a simple painting.
For him it was a symbol of hope. And for some reason, people faced with life-threatening illnesses at different stages have painted or done something with sunflowers. Maybe it's just that symbol of hope, that it follows the light, we don't know.
Today, his sunflower legacy lives on in haematology wards across the country and through the Sunflower Fund that Tina established after his death.